Lorraine Robles.
So Lorraine is going to talk about the three priorities we have for development on the west side, Alazan, Lincoln, and Casiano, and a little bit of the history and how we got there, how we made those decisions, and where we are today.
So good afternoon again. As Ed mentioned, I wanted to go through the steps that were taken in order to prioritize those three developments. But if you'll recall, back in 2011, we received a choice planning grant for Wheatley Courts. And then in 2012, we received the implementation grant to get started. Part of that support, well, much of that support came from the city of San Antonio with the understanding that we would eventually take that blueprint and move it over to the west side. And so in trying to prioritize our developments, can we go to the next slide? I just wanted to show you where they're located in the west side community. So at the top, you have Lincoln Heights. Towards the middle is Alazan Apache, and right next to it is Casiano Homes. So those are the three main developments that we're looking at, the old public housing that's left. What we took into consideration, one was the age and physical condition of each property, the school performance, because believe it or not, with funding, they take that into consideration. Neighborhood conditions. So you're looking at owner occupied. What percentage of the neighborhood is owner occupied? How much is rental? How many vacant lots? How many vacant parcels? Abandoned structures? As well as access to amenities. So you're also looking at retail, commercial, residential, resident services, social services, transit. And so along with those, you also have to look at the point scoring, because what we wanted to do was see if we could obtain another choice grant for the west side. So in looking at the criteria for choice, first and foremost was the capacity of the agency. We'd already proven ourselves with our East Side project. Need is huge. For a choice, you need to prove that you're in an area where there's high poverty, which was easy for us. But sometimes that doesn't always work with other funding that we have to go after with it. Community support. Do we have the social and financial support to get this moving? Likelihood of implementation. So if we do approve you, will you move forward with it? And then leverage, both governmental and philanthropic. And then we also got bonus points if it was a promise zone area or whatnot. So can we go to the next slide? So the key indicators that helped us come to our conclusion was a quantity of units. So if you look at each one, Alazan, Casiano, and Lincoln, the density per acre, and you can see the highest density falls within Alazan and Lincoln. Year built, 1939 and 1940 for Lincoln, 1950, through 1967 for Casiano. REACT scores is huge, right? Alazan was at 53, Casiano 84, and Lincoln 93. And remember, this is a point in time, right? School performance, so they're looking at not just the elementary and middle school, but also high schools. And so we can see for each of our developments, because they're all within that same school zone, some of them met requirements and the majority needed to improve. The other items that
What requirements?
met school requirements,
What are those?
academics. So like, what is it? The TA requirements.
Guidelines, what they say that they meet or exceed.
Oh, the TEA
TA
requirements?
requirements.
Oh,
So how are they rated? How are our schools rated?
oh,
Are
the
they
star
exemplary? Well, the stars
Is
is,
one criteria.
Right.
Yeah.
so
Okay.
are our schools meeting? Are they exceeding, or are they needing improvement?
Okay.
And so unfortunately, in this particular area, we had one elementary that met, the others needed improvement. We had one middle school that met, and the other ones needed improvement. And our high school, because they all shared the same high school, right? They all fed into linear, needed improvement at the time.
That's terrible.
Yes, it's been rough. The other thing I wanted you to know that we also had to take into consideration was we had to account for flooding, right? What is the impact? If we were to get a 25-year flood, what would that look like? And it would affect 8 buildings from Alazan, 1 from Lincoln, and 1 from Casiano. If we had a 100-year storm flood, then you're looking at 30 buildings at Alazan that would have been impacted versus 1 at Casiano and 9 at Lincoln. And we know that the creek runs through Lincoln and divides that property. Can we go to the next slide? So with this information, along with, again, we looked at the point scoring system, which one is most likely to score better? Where do we have the actual financial and political support to get these off the ground? And what is in the greatest need? Which ones are the oldest? We prioritized the projects this way, which was Alazan Courts, we would go after first, then Lincoln Heights, and then Casiano Homes. Can we go to the next slide? So we talked about, Mr. Gonzalez was talking about a master plan and how important it is for us to have one. And it's extremely important. We did it for Wheatley Choice. But I wanted you to see the timing because sometimes this isn't apparent. And I know that he also mentioned, sometimes it took 14 years, right, before you can get funding. And that plan is sitting there. But for Victoria Courts, for example, which was demoed in 1998, we're still working on it. We're still trying to finish out that property in those phases. And that was over 600 units of public housing. San Juan Homes, we started that in 2005. We did that in 3 phases. We demoed in 3 phases and rebuilt in 3 phases, and we completed in 2014. Just to give you, again, an idea of what it takes in order to do the planning and then actually implement. Next was Sutton Homes. That was a smaller property. We demoed all at once and we rebuilt in 2 phases. So that went from 2008 to 2013. And then Wheatley Courts started in 2010 and completed in 2020. So now we look at Alazan Courts, which was our top priority, as you saw. We've been at this since 2015. And we are still trying to move forward with it. We did finish the legacy at Alazan. So that was 88 units that we built on site. But we haven't actually touched the actual Alazan Courts, the 501 units. We did a master planning process that went all through last year, was completed earlier this year, so that we can talk about how do we move forward. And that was the Alazan expansion that I spoke about earlier. And so we're just moving forward with that phase. So as you can see, if you want to do it well, you have to take the time to do the planning and make sure that it's comprehensive planning, that you include not just residents, but neighbors and community groups, so that everybody has a voice in what's happening. And that's the great part, right? Because you get to sit and listen and share ideas and make designs and make decisions about what we want and what it's going to look like. But the difficult part is finding the funding. And when you can't find the funding and you've gotten everybody excited about the funding, it's extremely difficult to be able to have to go back. And we've had to do this, go back and say, we didn't get the funding. And so now we're not giving up. We're just going to try again. And we're going to look at alternate funding. And that's what we're doing now.
So Lorraine, thanks for the overview of development and how long it takes. Some of these projects, well, Victoria Courts, it's been over 2 decades now, and it'll be 3 before it's complete. Yes. I think this is also listed in closed session if the board would like to have additional discussion about it.
Okay. No, we appreciate it because that's a lot of times that's what gets lost. I mean, heck,
Thank you.
this board will be entirely different, by the time these things come to, completion.
I just want the community to know that this board is committed to looking at the federal government, the state, and the city to get us funding. Because we know that our housing was built a long time ago. And we know that it needs redoing. And we know that you are depending on us to work hard to try to find money. And so know that we feel responsible to do a good job for you. And that we will work hard. Y para los que no entienden inglés, les quiero decir que entiendan que esta board se siente responsable para tratar de encontrar el dinero para poder arreglar Casiano, Lincoln y Apache. Y que sabemos que fueron construidos hace muchos años y que necesitan nueva construcción y que nos sentimos responsables para que estén mejores y que sabemos que ustedes están viviendo allí y están tratando de hacerlas mejor. Nosotros vamos a ir al gobierno federal, al gobierno estatal y a la ciudad para que sepan que necesitamos ayuda y que necesitamos dinero para hacer las casas de ustedes mejores. Así que sepan que estamos tratando y que nos sentimos responsables. Gracias por venir.
The items that were brought to us earlier during Citizens to be Heard, those are immediate concerns, and staff has been real, they have also brought things like that to us, and we as a board want to be in support of the items that staff wants to identify. And those are short-term. In other words, we recognize the redevelopment takes time, as what was just presented. There are short-term goals that this board is certainly identifying, the health concerns, the items that y'all mentioned with regards to roaches and mice, and those are important to us, the plumbing. So this board, through our relationship, or through this board with the CEO, will make sure that it does get addressed. And it's important to us. It's not going to be lost on just your words today.
I'm waiting for you to go into the next section.
Okay. No other comments with regards to this one. We can go to item 13. Discussion regarding resident concerns.
Wanted to see specifically to the operating issues, if Brandy perhaps could speak to what we could do in the short term at Casiano, Lincoln, and Alazan,
Okay.
since we're now seeing these are long-term,
Right.
commitments we're making. But there's probably things we can try from an operating standpoint to help improve the quality of the housing.
Sure. Thank you, Ed, for that. So as Ed mentioned, we've made great strides in trying to address the needs of our residents. And part of that was always looking at our pest control. And so we went from at one point we did it every other month, and now we've been doing monthly treatments and making sure. We were also, during the time of COVID, we did stop housekeeping inspections, and probably many of the residents that spoke today, you probably walk into their units and they're immaculate, right? And we know that. We also know when we live in multifamily units, it's maybe not my unit that is has the concerns, but it could be the neighbor that isn't, their housekeeping may not be. So we're bringing those back and to really try to address some of the housekeeping issues that we know oftentimes bring these unwanted guests into our homes. We do have not just inside the units when a resident has said, I have concerns there. We do have throughout a lot of our properties, we have bait traps to help with that. As in Lorraine's presentation, y'all heard, we have a lot of creeks. Lincoln has a huge creek that runs through it. Casiano's the same way. We recognize that oftentimes that's where these things come up to. So we're trying to address that through many different avenues. We're going to continue to talk with our pest control vendor to see, is there other opportunities? Is once a month not enough? And then of course, we're always going to encourage our residents to please, please, please call in work orders and let us understand what is happening in the unit. We also know when pest control does come, you may not have the issue today, but we still need to get into that unit. So we're also looking at the evaluation of if you don't let us in, we need to get in, and just reminding the residents. So there's a couple of other things that we're still exploring, but those some of those key elements that we could hit immediately.
Okay. No, thank you. I appreciate y'all making that a priority for obvious reasons. And relay the thanks to council and the mayor's office for helping making this a priority too. Okay. We'll go to